Good evening. I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, February 1st, 2021 to order. We are conducting our meeting remotely in compliance with the special Open Public Meetings Act rules issued by Governor Inslee's emergency order. City Clerk, can you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa.
Present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming, here.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, present.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi is here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin our meeting, we have a few special rules I want to go over with everyone. First, participation in public comments and public testimony on the public hearing will be accepted by the following methods. One, written comments or testimony will continue to be accepted via email. Comments received before the 5:30 deadline will be electronically provided to the City Council for their consideration. Two, subject to technological limitations, the council will also accept telephonic comments or testimony by calling the number listed on the agenda, 1-509-342-7253 with conference ID number 999-834-536#. For members of the public who are calling in, please be advised that your calls will be taken in the order it is received. To ensure order, your microphone will be muted until you have been recognized to speak. You will be recognized by the last four digits of your telephone number. At that time, you will be asked to unmute your microphone by pressing *6. Secondly, for council members, as with our previous remote meetings this past year, we will continue to use the round robin method in the sequence showing in the speaking and voting chart that has been provided to each of you to ensure that everyone has had a chance to speak. With that, may I ask Councilmember Fleming to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Please join me in pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fleming. With that, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Madam Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for approval of the agenda as submitted.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, a second.
I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to the agenda as presented? Seeing none and hearing none, the approval of the agenda passes unanimously. At this time, we are open for public comments. I am not aware of any public being on our telephone at this time. However, each of you should have received an email that was forwarded to you today from Joanne Fritz. So I hope you've had an opportunity to read that email, and it will be posted as part of the record today. At this time, we are on to our consent agenda. May I call for a motion for approval or to the consent agenda as submitted?
And Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington again, and I move for the approval of the consent agenda as submitted.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Yes, Councilmember Keel, a second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to the consent agenda as submitted? Okay, seeing and hearing none, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. At this time, we are on to our next section of our agenda. It's council consideration. Our first consideration this evening is the GGLO Planning Services Contract. And for that, I would ask that our Public Works Director, Gary Cooper, take center stage and turn on your camera as we are expecting a staff report from you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Is my camera shows it's on? Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Gary Cooper, Director of Public Works and Parks for the City of University Place. And item number 7 on tonight's agenda is a professional services agreement with GGLO Consultants for the planning services at Homestead Park. This is a companion item for item number 6D of tonight's agenda, which was on the consent agenda, directing the Park Advisory Commission to move forward with the development of a master plan for Homestead Park. To accomplish this work, the Park Advisory Commission will need assistance from a professional consultant to develop a detailed plan. GGLO has previous experience with this project and has presented some draft renderings to council at our last meeting. The expected process and deliverables will be working with the Parks Commission as well as Public Safety, Economic Development, and Planning Commissions, review the public comments already received as part of the public outreach during our pros plan, flash vote, and Inspire 2045 public comments, develop and implement a public outreach and input plan to gather additional comments, provide presentation materials and renderings for those meetings, conduct a survey and mapping of existing tree canopy, including a written arborist report to include species, structure, maintenance needs, preservation value, and recommendations on the trees within the park, ultimately developing a conceptual design for council review by mid-summer 2021. Staff recommends authorizing city manager to execute a professional services agreement with GGLO Consultants for the design consultant services associated with the Homestead Park Master Plan in the amount of $64,932. With that as a summary, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. This is open for public comment at this time. That's the next item on our agenda. We have not received any emails, nor do we have any public that are currently on our video conference here. So therefore, we'll go into council consideration. Does council have any comments or questions in regards to this item? With that, I will ask if Council Member Figueroa has any comments or questions.
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments.
Okay. Council Member Keel, do you have any comments or questions?
Great, thank you, Mayor. I just have one, Gary. You know, in our study, we talked about, and you mentioned it in your readout of your staff report, but I just want to tie a bow around this question, and that is GGLO, as well as the committee or anyone that's working on this plan, considering how are they considering those trees and our roadies and, you know, the ones that, you know, that we talked about in our study session about want to make sure that we preserve a lot of those things or move them to different places versus just getting rid of them altogether. Can you speak to that?
Yes, definitely. The plan is not to eliminate any roadies. Anything that needs to be adjusted or moved in order to make room for any improvements the intent is to keep them either in that park or the adjacent park across the way. But the real goal is not to remove roadies. Probably there will be some, like I said, adjustment to where they are for better sight lines. But not only myself personally, as I've shared with you before, I have memorial roadies in there for my family, but also the Park Commission takes that serious, and the consultant heard loud and clear from the council that that's very important. So while we said there may be some lower roadies planted along the trails to improve sight lines, there isn't any intent at this time to eliminate roadies.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments or questions?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have one question, Gary, and I may have missed it. Is there a timeline on this? We have a lot of parts to this program, commissions and so forth that everything has to dovetail. Or is this contract just broad brush, kind of an overview, and then we move on later to the timeline?
This phase of it to come back to council with a conceptual design is midsummer. We're targeting June.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a comment and a sort of a framed question. I'm excited that to see what the outcome of this is going to be after to update our Homestead Park and to make it more attractive for more people to use, especially as we grow the population around the town center, and also when we bring back our events to make it more user-friendly to increase the event activities in the park as well. My question was, when I was looking over the compensation, there is a master plan approval for hourly to limit up to $40,000. And then I noted the hourly rate that the senior and other designers are charging. They're in the 3 digits. How many hours would that be? And are they really realistically able to do it and keep it under the $40,000? Because that sounds like they have a very high hourly rate. And so my concern is that unless there's other people with lower hourly rate going to work on this project, that we may exceed the $40,000 pretty quickly, depending on the extent of the work, the public comment, and as Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, all the different facets of this project coming together. So that would be my only concern, because I really would like to keep it under the $64,000 and not have any additional overrides.
So the comment is, does GGLO believe they can do their portion for 40,000? They truly do. We vetted this
Okay.
multiple times with them. They're very confident that they're comfortable within that number.
Okay. I look forward to the report and keeping it under budget. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a couple real quick. You know, dovetailing on the previous comments with the spending, I'm always concerned about contracts that are open-ended, and I'm hoping, Gary, with this contract, that there is a cap on this so that we don't end up with a halfway completed project with a request for more funding, because I would have a hard time supporting that if that were to happen. So I'm going to presume, based on your previous comments, that this is a sum total and not to exceed, and we will get a completed project proposal out of that. Okay, is that your understanding also?
It is. It is.
Okay. The other thing I heard in the conversations that led up to tonight is that we can anticipate a moderate to significant number of trees to be removed in this project. I would like to just hear your thoughts and comments on what is that process. In other words, will it come back to council for a conversation before any contracts let to remove those trees? Or is that just pretty much a done deal? Someone will identify them, they'll be gone, and that'll be the end of the conversation.
Absolutely not, Councilmember Fleming. Remember that this is a conceptual design plan that once it's done, it will come back to council, and the design of any improvements will be overlaid the existing tree survey that's done, and any trees that need to be removed to make that happen would be require council blessing before that happens. Council has to sign off on any of these improvements. We just need to get out there and design a plan and see how we can make things fit. The consultant has voiced, and I don't know if you recall back when we had the retreat, their goal is to remove as few trees as absolutely possible. One of the reasons for the tree survey is not only to find out exactly where they are and try and build around that, But the other part of it is that you see on there, the arborist report is a pretty healthy number. They're actually going to go in there and they want to check those trees. And just because they're standing doesn't mean they're healthy. We want to know the quality and the health of all the trees that are in there. And if we find trees that maybe aren't top health, top quality, then we would know, okay, if we have to remove 5 trees to make something fit, let's move that improvement over that way where that tree already has to come out due to health. But not a single tree, not a single roadie will be cut, trimmed, or pruned until this is back in front of council and you have your input on it.
I appreciate that, Gary. And, and this is my jaundiced eye on arborist, and this is not by any stretch of anyone's imagination to malign the arborist that's doing the work for us. But again, my, past experiences have been when we want to remove a tree, the tree, we get an arborist to come in and they say, yep, that tree's bad, it's got to go. It's sometimes interesting to note that trees can be healthy until they got to be, until we need to make way for something, and then that tree is not healthy. So I'm truly counting on this arborist, whoever he or she may be, to give us really an honest assessment, not just say, hey, this is in the way of the project, it's diseased, it's got to go. If it is, so be it. If it's not, let's take a look at that. And I like what you just said when you said it. If we have to adjust the project a little bit to preserve certain trees, we should do that.
And I guess I will comment on your comment on some arborists. I've experienced the same thing, but it's usually when they're associated with the tree cutting company. And this one will be totally separate.
Okay, thank you. Those are my comments and remarks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Belisi. Yes, I do. First off, I appreciated the earlier discussion on budget, on trees and rhododendrons, all important for us to be able to make sure we have a clear understanding of what goes on there and how we're going to proceed. So thank you, fellow council members, for doing that. Gary, when we had this as a study item, one of the other things we talked about was if the consultant could provide, as they're looking at different activities, different things we can do in that space, if they could provide an estimate of the maintenance or operating cost, so we could compare at some point, just before the end of the project, not necessarily the first thing to do, but somewhere. And we would know if there were a high, medium, or low maintenance and operating expense associated with that particular activity. Is that going to be in the project?
It is. Councilmember Worthington, I apologize. I made my notes on my talking points today, and I left that off the talking points. But yes, that is something that we laid out. Not only cost to build it, but what's it cost to maintain? And the other hat I wear, that's the frustration I have. We build stuff that then is very difficult for my team to maintain. So I'm sorry I didn't put that in my bullet point in my speech, but that is part of the expectation of the design.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate knowing that, and that answers the only question I had remaining. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I want to thank our consultants, GGLO, for listening to council during our retreat and making sure that they will emphasize the priorities of the community and the council as they move forward in developing this plan, with input from both our Parks Advisory Commission as well as the citizens of University Place. So I'm looking forward to seeing some engagement occurring and some creative thought process coming out of this, and look forward to seeing that report and getting periodic updates as we move along. So if there are no other comments or questions at this time, I would like to call for motion on this item, the GGLO Planning Services Contract. Do I have a motion?
Mayor Belisi, yes, I move for the approval of the GGNO Planning Service Contract. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, final round. Any comments or concerns at this time? Okay, not hearing any. City Clerk, can you please call a roll?
Councilmember Figueroa,
You are muted, Councilmember Figueroa.
All right. Councilmember Figueroa, yes. Yeah.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, yes.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion carries, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Good job. Now GGLO can get started here. Our next item for council consideration is the University Place Refuge franchise agreement. We had a study session at our last regular meeting regarding this. This evening, we do have a staff report from Lisa Patoric, our HR director, and Matt Kaiser, our attorney. May I request their presence, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Linda, would you mind putting up the PowerPoint presentation, please? Thank you. So as you are well aware, the city attorney and I have been in negotiations with the University Place Refuge for the past year, and joining us this evening is Neil Holden, Vice President of University Place Refuge, and Michael Gruner, who is the production manager of University Place Refuge. They will be making themselves available at the end of the staff presentation if there are any questions that council may have. Next slide, please. So as you may recall, University Place has 2 franchise agreements for refuge services. The first and largest agreement is with University Place Refuge. The second is with LeMay. Both companies have been operating within city limits since prior to incorporation, and both have franchise agreements that are set to expire December 31st of 2025. Now, both franchises are separate, but they largely mirror one another in terms of language. They're almost identical. But tonight we'll be focusing on the franchise proposal with University Place Refuge. We are still in talks with LeMay, and we will be touching base on LeMay's contract at a future date. So tonight for University Place Refuge, next slide, please. You can see in yellow that this is the area that is serviced by UP Refuge. It covers most of the city. The small quadrant in the southeastern part of the city is serviced by LeMay. University Place Refuge has approximately 410 commercial customers and about 8,500 residential accounts. And LeMay has approximately 22 commercial accounts and 425 residential customers. Next slide, please. So as we went through the negotiation process with University Place Refuge, we touched on a multitude of topics, but we narrowed them down into the proposed language, and they touch on 2 major focuses. The first is related to rates and how those are charged and calculated to the residents. And you can see that there are 3 rate increases and rate changes to the current franchise agreement that we'll get into in detail. The first one is the methodology and how the franchise proposes to calculate the CPI calculation and the LRI calculation into the base rates. The second consideration is a request by UP Refuge to increase their commercial drop box and compactor rates up to the Pierce County average. And then the final topic related to rates is tied to the Pierce County average rate ceiling, and we'll touch on that in more detail. In exchange for those services, the city has requested enhancements on the residential customer side in terms of low-income senior discounts, a bulky pickup item service, and increasing the dump access that UP Refuge has within the city. In addition to that, we'll touch on franchise length, and then there's various housekeeping items that were cleaned up in this brand new proposed franchise. Next slide, please. So the first topic that is a change to the current franchise is related to how the CPI calculation and the landfill or LRI rate is proposed to ratepayers. Under the current franchise, the base rates are multiplied by 70% of the CPIU for Seattle and Tacoma Bellevue. That amount gets applied to all of the base rates, and then the LRI annual adjustment fee is added on top of that, and then so goes the city's administrative fee. The proposed methodology is a slight change to how the current calculation methodology occurs. The change involves removing the current year's LRI rate from all of the base rates. Then 100% of the CPIU for Seattle Tacoma Bellevue is calculated in, and then the following year's LRI pass-through rate is then added to all of the base rates. So this would apply to both commercial and residential customers, and the end result is sort of a mixed bag. There are a few residential customers that will see a slight increase over the current methodology, but the most common customer, which is the customer that has a 64-gallon toter every other week with recycling, they will actually see a decrease in the rates under the proposed methodology versus the current methodology that's in place. Commercial customers, most of them will see an increase. And this is where I do want to touch on the topic of the recycling charge. And as you can recall, for the previous 2 years, University Place Refuse has come before council and requested a specific recycling rate surcharge due to the decreases that we're seeing across the worldwide recycling market over the past few years. There are some shimmers of light and some rebound in those markets, but University Place Refuse is coming before council one last time to request that a 3.13% increase be applied to all base rates. And they feel that if this 3.13% recycling charge is applied, they will no longer need to come before council to ask for this surcharge. And so you can see from the second table, I wanted to show you an example of what the most common customer would experience. And you can see from there sort of the rate breakdown versus the 2020 rate, and then the removal of the current year's LRI, the addition of the next year's LRI, and then the application of the CPI. And you'll see in the end, there is a $1.26 difference to the current rate, or a 4.3% change for the most common customer. Next slide, please. In addition to the change to the LRI and CPI rate, University Place Refuse came before the city and requested an increase to their drop box and compactor rates. And a rate study was done, and indeed a lot of the commercial drop box rates were lower than the Pierce County average. And so University Place Refuse is requesting that there is an increase, and there's two separate increases requested. The first is for drop boxes. And of course, those are based on size and pickup rates. Because the increase is something that would be above what a customer would normally see in a 1-year time period, the request is to provide the increase over a 3-year period so as to lessen the impact of the initial market change. The change for compactors is slightly different in that the request is to change how the compactor boxes are calculated. So there are different compactors that customers use. There's compactors that have a 1-to-1 compaction rate. Others have a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, all the way up to a 6-to-1 compactor. And there's currently 4 customers that have compacted containers on a regular basis. And you'll see that for 3 out of the 4 customers, their rates will be relatively close to the market, but there is one retail grocer that would see a larger increase impact, and that's due to basically the size of their compactor. They have a 6-to-1 compactor, which is the largest available. And so what currently would occur under the proposed agreement is that the the compactor would be multiplied by the compaction rate. So if it's 1-to-1, it'd be multiplied by 1 time, and up to the amount of the compaction rate from there, but then discounted at 12%. And so for those customers, because they would be seeing a larger increase than they normally would in a normal year period, it's proposed that those rates would increase over a 5-year period to lessen the amount of increase that those folks would see over a year. So there are about 377 customers on the commercial side that use the container service. 30 of those are for permanent drop boxes, and again, 4 of those customers use those larger compacted containers. So Dropbox increases would be anywhere from 2 to 50%, so anywhere from 5 cents to $57. But again, when you divide that over a 3-year period, the increase ranges from a few pennies to about a $20 increase for the year. For compactor containers, that increase is anywhere from 100 to 200% increase. But again, when you divide that over a 5-year period, the increase ranges from $50 to $130. But again, that $130 is for the largest compactor, which is the 6-to-1 compaction service with special pickup. Next slide, please. The final topic related to rate changes involves the Pierce County average rate ceiling, or what we're calling the PCAR. The PCAR is a rate ceiling that ensures that the rates that are charged by University Place Refuse are tied to the rates found within the rest of the county, and they can exceed or wildly outpace what's happening with other haulers around the county. And so when we're doing these calculations, we include haulers that are from Lakewood, Puyallup, Tacoma, Gig Harbor, other unincorporated areas across Pierce County. And those are used to create what's called the Pierce County average rate ceiling. And in the current franchise, the rate ceiling is at 100%. UP Refuse is requesting that be increased slightly to 103% of the Pierce County average. However, the city feels that it is important to keep that Pierce County average rate ceiling in place so that whatever is occurring in the rest of the county is reflected also through UP Refuse's rates, and that they stay within the relative market comparators. Next slide, please. So in an effort to provide some extended services for the requests made by UP Refuse, city staff requested that there were specific enhancements made for residential customers, and there are 3 of those. The first one is a low-income senior discount. The second service enhancement is a bulky item pickup service, and then the final one is expanded use of their drop-off site within the city. So let's talk about the low-income senior discount first. Next slide, please. So for those seniors that are currently using a 24 or 48 gallon waste container service through University Place Refuse, if those individuals are receiving a discount from TPU through TPU's low-income senior program, then they simply have to show that to UP Refuse, and UP Refuse will provide those seniors a 20% discount off of either the 24 or 48 gallon waste container services. Those could include recycling or not recycling. Next slide, please. The next service enhancement is the bulky waste pickup, or what we're calling call to haul. For this service, residential customers that are in good standing, meaning they're not delinquent or behind on their bills, they are able to call University Place Refuse once a year and set up an appointment to have 5 bulky items removed from their front yard. And so bulky items can be, they're described in the current franchise based on weight and size limitations, but essentially common things that you can think about would be refrigerators, dressers, washer, dryer, those sorts of things, dining room table, things like that. So for most of those items, there would not be a charge to pick up those items and haul them away. The only items that would see a charge would be those items containing a compressor, so refrigerators and freezers, because those have to be disposed of in a particular way. And so those can still be picked up by University Place Refuse, but those items would be charged the rate on the tariff sheet, but they would be discounted at 20%. And so UP Refuse would provide this service to no less than 300 customers annually. Next slide, please. The next item that would be a service enhancement would be the opening of their dump services located at their place of business. The first Saturday of each month, University Place customers would be able to go and take their waste materials there and drop them off for a fee. It would be the same fee that is applied during the rest of the week, but it affords an opportunity for those residents who aren't able to make it over to the UP Refuse site during the week, an extra Saturday. And this has become very, very important now that the Tacoma dump has stopped non-Tacoma residents from dumping at their location. So this was an added enhancement that the city felt was very important for residential customers. And the Saturday site would be open the same times as their recycling service operating hours. And of course, if the Saturday fell on a holiday, it would be moved to another time that month. Next slide, please. The next major topic that was discussed was the franchise length. So again, the current franchise is set to expire December 31st, 2025. The proposed franchise would begin upon adoption. The rate changes would be effective March 1st, and the new termination date would be December 31st of 2035. There is language within the franchise that would provide for a one-time option to extend the franchise for an additional 5 years, which would take the city through 2040. That agreement must be mutually agreed to upon both the company and the city. But either way, negotiations for either an extension or a new franchise would not begin until the year 2033. Next slide, please. And then because this is a new franchise, a lot of language was modernized and updated. RCWs were reviewed. Some RCWs and codes were out of date, so those were all updated. There was a section that provided for enhanced insurance additions based on the request by the city's insurance carriers. And so the city attorney worked diligently with UP Refuse to make those changes happen, and those are included in the proposed franchise. So again, just updating the franchise that will hopefully take the city through the next 15 years. So in closing, staff has negotiated with UP Refuse a franchise that attempts to balance the market comparator considerations with customer needs and also with the value of an in-city locally owned hauler. FCS Group did provide a full rate study, providing a comparator of rates across the rest of the county. In addition, it was very important that the city get some of these enhanced services on top of some of the boutique services that are already provided by University Place Refuse. In the current franchise, we allow for the spring and fall cleanups and drop-offs that have become quite popular within the community. Those are still within the new proposed franchise, so those did not go away. Some other enhancements occur that were included, just confirming the recycling sites that are in place, that we still have recycling sites in the city, and maybe looking at some other events such as paper shredding events and things like that. So we did hold on to a lot of the boutique services from the current franchise and also provided those in the updated franchise. So all in all, staff is recommending that this franchise be approved as proposed. And so that concludes the staff presentation. UP Refuse is available to answer any questions that you may have as well. And they might be hopping on here through their video.
Okay, at this time, this is open for public comment, but none was received by 5:30 this evening. So, and we have no one other than the UP Refuse here for public comment. So I will close the public comment section, and we will be on to council comments and questions. Councilmember Figueroa, do you have a comment or a question at this time?
No, I do not. Thank you for the presentation, though.
Yes. Councilmember Keel, do you have a comment or question?
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've got a few questions, and just to follow up on the study session, just to see kind of where we are. So thanks for Lisa, the presentation, and I really appreciate it. It's very thorough, and I learned some things, and you answered some of my questions. So that was great. The one comment you made about, and I didn't write it down, but there was a cost for a service that we increased to by 3.5% or something. And I think the statement was, since they got that increase, then they're not going to be looking for any increases in the future. So can you, I mean, that's a pretty bold statement. Are you tracking with what I'm saying?
Yes, so I believe if I'm hearing you correctly, the 3.13% that you're referencing is the recycling charge. And as you recall, the previous 2 years, University Place Refuse has come before council requesting a recycling surcharge because there was a market disruption and the recycling market fell because, as you recall, the major player in the recycling market, which was China at the time, essentially refused all incoming recyclable materials. Since that time, other countries have sort of taken up that market, and there are signs of a rebound. In our discussions with University Place Refuse throughout last year, we did touch on the subject, and we talked about this multiple times, and they feel that with this one last increase to the base rates, they will no longer be coming forward on this subject. And Matt can probably speak to that as well, but we do have confirmation that yes, that is correct.
So, and so maybe Matt or maybe the vendor can comment. So no longer come back, does that mean no longer within the next 3 years? No longer ever, or within the next 10 years? I mean, is it time boxed? Is it like never come back, or won't come back for the next 2 years or something?
We don't have a time box per se listed in the current franchise language. It's an understanding that we have had through our discussions with UP Refuse, but there's not a specific time frame that you're referencing in the franchise language under the proposal.
Okay.
Lisa, if I may, this is Michael Gruner, UP Refuse. Councilmember Keel, what we've seen in the recycling markets right now is kind of a leveling out of things. There have been a whole bunch of domestic plants that have come online that have kind of picked up from where China left off, and so that stabilization has made it to where we're confident that this increase will take us into the future just fine, without us having to come before council to request any kind of emergency increase. Because once these plants are online domestically, then we don't have to worry about the other players, China and whatnot, because we can handle it all, shall I say, in-house.
Okay, great, thank you. Thanks for that. The other question I had, Lisa, it just talks about increases in general. I know, I know cost of living and, things change and, everyone, tries to get an increase just based on that, right? And so I get that piece. And so I'm assuming that we'll get that type of stuff. And then as the P car fluctuates up and down, we may need to adjust based upon the P car. And I'm thinking that, so I'm making a question. So I'm making a statement, but it's a question. Am I on track with assuming those two pieces? And then beyond that, I'm wondering, are there other opportunities that staff sees that, UP Refuge may need to come back to us for increases?
Okay, so if I'm hearing you, Council Member, let's go over PCAR and CPI again, and then we'll talk about future increases. So obviously the CPI was in the current franchise at 70%. Under the proposed, it's been modified to 100%. But yes, that's sort of the standard cost of living that is applied here. The PCAR is something that's not necessarily, it's an important factor in this franchise, and it's not something that's found in a lot of other franchises. And it's important because it does keep the city level, and it ties us to the rest of the Pierce County average and what's happening in the county. So while the request is to increase it from 100% to 103%, we're still weighted with the average. And so if you look at the various schedules, there are areas where we're at 85% of the Pierce County average. And so it's going to take quite a few years, right, for that to go to 103%. But the rates could never go above 103% of whatever the Pierce County average is. And so we're always going to be tied to whatever those other haulers charge for those same services.
So, okay, so then say in the case that we're at 85%, can UP Refuge come back? Like, what's the interval that they can come back and get the rate increased to approach the 103%? I mean, is it every year, every 2 years? Is there a cycle by which those kinds of rates can be asked for increases?
So currently in the franchise, the only automatic rates are those that are linked to the CPI and the LRI. That hasn't changed from how the franchise has been handled for the past about 5 years or so. Those have always been automatic. There is the ability, if UP Refuge has a change that's greater than $10,000, that they could come back and make a request. But that is, and maybe Matt can speak to that a little bit more, that's a part of the franchise agreement to sort of future-proof something. So if something does come up, it does have to be reviewed, right? So staff has to review it. Council would have to make some sort of approval, but there's nothing essentially in the franchise that would say, aside from that $10,000 threshold, right? That would keep UP Refuge from, if something tangential happened or something strange happened, for them to come back and want to have a discussion. There's nothing that would preclude them from that, so long as it met sort of that dollar limitation in the franchise.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that just for a few minutes, Matt Case, your city attorney, I think the way to look at it is where and when do you set the rates? And there's a couple different models that the council can employ. This particular one sets the initial rates in the franchise, and it comes up with a formula from which all rates will subsequently be derived thereafter. And you have a cost and payment measure in there through the PCAR mechanism. So that way costs will never go above 103%. But UP Refuge still has the opportunity, because they're not going to agree otherwise, to come back and say, hey, here's these extenuating circumstances, we'd like to make the pitch to council, that here's these extenuating circumstances. Council, can you modify these rates for us? And council can listen to that pitch and it can say yes, or it can say no. But the intent is that you can't cut UP Refuse off on the right to at least making the initial ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And that ask can go beyond the 103% based on, some extenuating circumstances.
And yes, and if that ask is made, let's hope that there are good facts that will support it.
Okay. All right. So I guess this is my last question. It kind of boils to, where I left the conversation before, and that is having this closed, what I'm calling a closed market, right? Within UP, these 8 square miles, these numbers of customers, and at the same time, internally, you have these cost pressures that are kind of building up and continuing to increase, and you got international stuff going on that's way out of our control, out of UP Refuge control, because China says we're not taking recycle, then we're stuck, right, or whatever, something that's out of our control. And those costs begin to grow, and they get these extenuating circumstances, and they come back to us. I mean, I'm just real nervous about how that business model works in an extreme circumstance, but it's just still something that I, as a council member, I want to know in my head, kind of how that stuff is going to work. Did you guys talk about that? Or maybe, Michael, you guys can maybe speak to what your thinking is along those lines?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, I think that, maybe our 80-year track record kind of speaks for itself, in that, we've been in these, what did you say, 4 square miles? We've been in this territory since 1942, doing our thing. And, if you look at the other territories that surround us, those are all, one hauler territories as well. And granted, those have all been bought out. However, they're able to make it work with their limited territory as well. So, I mean, that's where we stand on that. We've been doing fine so far, and we don't see that changing.
See, and this is Neil. What I would add is the changes we've made to the drop boxes and the compacted containers. Those will help greatly, because that has been, we've had to subsidize those for a long time. And so that for the future, especially if it looks like most of the growth would be in those 2 areas, either the drop boxes or the compacted containers in University Place. And so that will help us a great deal.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate your response. I mean, I know you guys have been here for a long time, and a lot of people, I mean, me included, love the service that you provide. I mean, you're part of our community. I mean, there's no question about that. But even with that being said, we're talking business here, right? And so we just need to make sure and understand that we all understand the numbers, the circumstances, and all those kind of things. And the things that happened 80 years ago, I mean, the world's crazy. I mean, things aren't like they used to be. They just aren't, from business, from everything. And so just trying to, make sure that all the conversations out on the table. So I appreciate your response. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, yes, I have a couple of questions. Lisa, the 3% recycle charge, which is called a surcharge, to me, a layman's understanding of surcharge is to cover something that is unusual, that couldn't be forecasted. So is this 3% surcharge throughout the contract, or is it just for how many, is it annual or what, how is it, what does it mean?
Go ahead.
So the we're calling this a recycling rate charge because it's applied to all the rates, and it's the last time, if council chooses to provide this, is the last time that this type of rate will be charged. Surcharges technically are provided for in the current franchise agreement, and we've done away with that specificity of language in the proposed agreement. But in regards to this recycling charge, yes, it would be applied to all of the base rates if approved by council this year, and then that would be it.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Michael in that I've seen in the last couple of weeks, manufacturers in some cases are becoming more responsible in the way that they package their products so that the excess material can be recycled. I also saw where there are recycling processing companies that are standing up to process this recyclable material that in the past hadn't been done. So if somehow in the future, over the years of this contract, recycling becomes profitable, will this 3% surcharge be reviewed? That's my question.
So I'll try to answer that, and then Michael, if you want to clarify, or feel free to. So at this point, under the franchise, under the current rate proposal as it's being provided to council, this is it. It will be built into the base rates this one time that would go into effect March 1st. And hopefully the subject wouldn't be revisited in the future if the market, remains where it's looking to remain, which hopefully is positive. There's no discussion that once this final charge is put in the base rates, for those then to be subtracted out in, hypothetically 10 years or so, if the recycling market's rebounded. It's not an ongoing surcharge, so to speak. It's just the one-time final base rate application that after this approval is made, if it's made, then that's it.
So it would be an annual charge throughout the contract?
No, it's not like a surcharge. It's not like
Okay.
a separate line item on top of the rate. Yeah.
I understand now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I want to thank the staff and UP Refuge for coming together and providing us a good contract. My priority as a council member pro tem is to make sure that our ratepayers get a reasonable return on their rates, and I believe that's happening. It has been happening, and I feel good about the future.
Mayor Belisi, I believe you're muted.
You're muted.
Didn't even know I had muted myself. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I concur with Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. I think there's great added value, and I like the added boutique services, as Ms. Pretoric is so inclined to call them. There's always an added bonus, and what our UP residents just expect from UP Refuge, because your good service has led the way to excel and exceed their expectations. So thank you very much for providing that. And I hope as we continue on, I know we were belayed a little bit with the educational component with the Curtis High School. And I know it was a voluntary addition for the educational component, and I'm still excited and will work towards that once the schools get back engaged, and we'll all be in contact with you for that. So thank you for opening up and engaging for an additional educational experience with the students in UP. And my last, as I was listening and reading the contract over the weekend, I just want a little bit of clarification on just a wordsmithing so that I know for sure what this means. Because on page 21, when it says company and the city further agree that due to service capacity, they may impose an aggregate annual limit on the number of customers receiving the service not to be below 300 annually. Does that mean anything 300 plus? Or would that, because I'm reading it as 300 as the minimal limit, and I think the intent was for the 300 to be the limit. So, and in your presentation, you had no more than instead of no less than. So it's probably just my understanding of those terms. You probably got it right, but I just want to make sure I understand it per the contract language.
My apologies, council member. So yes, the bulky pickup service or the call to haul shall not be below 300 annually. So UP Refuse has agreed to provide the service to a minimum of 300 residential customers.
Oh, excellent. So they can be more.
They did the math. We had conversations about it. We felt that,
all right,
not go below 300 annually is workable.
Okay, all right. I'm more excited about it now because I thought it was limited. Excellent. So thank you. That's what I thought I heard initially. So I just wanted to make sure. So I like that better. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Fleming, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say a couple of things real quick. One, this is a conversation that actually began almost a year ago. It was one of the first topics that came to council right after I had joined the council. So, for those who are listening, this is a negotiation that didn't happen overnight, but has gone on for quite some time. And I do want to do a shout out to Mike and Neil and Lisa and Matt for the work that they did representing both the interest of their companies and the city. But what I was pleased with in the end result is that, once again, we have a contract with UP Refuse that really reflects that long-term partnership that they've had with the citizens in our community. Back to Mike's earlier comment, this is a family-owned business that's been in our community since 1942, I believe it is. If I misstate that, Mike can correct me, or Neil.
You're right.
But it creates, this is one of those rare kind of contracts that creates really a win-win for everyone. So no one walks away from the table feeling like they got slighted in the process. So, again, just, thank you to everyone who had more patience than I did, in bringing this to fruition. But I am truly ready to move this one forward and get some conclusion to it. So I'm glad it's before us tonight.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any comments or questions at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Yes, I do have a couple of things. First off, I also, in the big picture view of things, believe this is a good contract for all parties. I think we all get something out of it. We all give something too. And our citizens ultimately, I believe, will be the winners here. It will cost a little bit more, but you also have some enhanced services, and it's important that we maintain a viable company to be able to do this. So I think the addition of the call to haul service is a great addition. Being able to have a Saturday drop off that we don't have to pay a premium for, just the regular rate to drop things off that we would experience any other day of the week. So first Saturdays become that day, and that helps quite a bit. And having special rates for people with special needs. If they're able to qualify through the power company, then they can easily demonstrate that and then qualify here as well. All of that, I think, is a step in the right direction. I did have a question or two about the rates, and in 17.4 is really where those questions were. I was trying to run through 17.4 in my head. And in that, this is the section that talks about 103% as the maximum chargeable amount. And I was trying to determine whether or not it was 103% of each category, each subset of rate types, for example, residential or commercial or the containers, or if it was the aggregate, the total of all categories. And as I looked at it, I came to the conclusion that I think it's 103% of all categories. And can someone confirm or help me understand that better?
Yes, Councilmember Worthington. There are schedules 1 through 5, and each of those schedules are separated out. So for Schedule 1, you have residential garbage, recycling, and yard waste service. So that is its own 103%, right?
Okay.
And then so on and so forth for drop boxes, compacted containers, etc.
Mm-hmm. So it's the case for each of the discrete scheduled items of the 5 different schedules. Each one has the potential at 103. Okay, thank you. I just want to get clarity on that because how they operate may be impacted one way or the other. And I think it's important for me at least to understand that. Very good. You know, the rest of it, I think, thank you both in terms of Michael and Neil and our team with Matt and Lisa as well. You've brought us something that I think I can stand with.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. I want to thank staff and UP Refuge for a successful negotiation. I think both sides benefit from this, but I think most of all our citizens benefit in that they have some added services that are dearly needed in this community, mainly the bulky pickup as well as the drop-off service. So I'm looking forward to having the word get out both through UP Refuge and through the city newsletter, informing our citizens of these new services, so that hopefully we can eliminate some of the bulky waste that is appearing on our side streets, and for apartment dwellers, providing them with an option for when they move, a place to actually dump their garbage instead of leaving it behind for somebody else to take care of. So I'm personally looking forward to this, and I'm hoping that we have a positive outcome here on our vote and are able to move this forward and have a long time business continue in our community that has provided some tremendous services, not only in garbage removal, but in support of city events and stuff, and being a real community partner. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to request a motion to approve the resolution or the contract.
Mayor Bellisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the University Place Refuge franchise agreement with the City of University Place.
Thank you. I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, a second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All right. Do I have approval? I mean, I need a vote. Do we have any final comments before we go into a vote? Does anybody else have any final comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Patoric.
My apologies, Madam Mayor. I believe I have forgotten that UP Refuge had wanted to show a link, and I'm wondering if now would be an appropriate time to provide that.
Sure, go for it.
University Place Refuse and Recycling has been an essential part of this community, keeping it clean since 1942. From humble beginnings as a one-man, one-truck business, we now operate a much larger, more sophisticated fleet of vehicles with a skilled, experienced crew in the office, the shop, and in the trucks, making sure the community stays clean, safe, and picked up on time. We offer our residential customers curbside garbage, commingled recycling, and yard waste pickup. We also have 2 convenient glass drop-off sites in the city, as well as a recycling center located at our facility. Our extremely popular semi-annual free clean-up events are held in April and October, where residents, both customers and non-customers alike, can bring in loads of rubbish for proper disposal and recycling. In 2019 alone, we handled nearly 2,100 loads, resulting in over 350 tons of material cleaned up from the community and 88 tons being diverted from the landfill. We also hold free curbside oversized brush pile pickups in May and November. This is also open to all residents, not just customers. Many residents take advantage of our free curbside bulky waste pickup program. Every year, a resident can schedule for us to stop by and pick up their bulky and oversized items for no charge. Commercial accounts take advantage of our personalized garbage and commingled recycling service, as well as our separated cardboard collection. We also offer those large drop boxes to collect and divert roofing, construction debris, and many other items for diversion from the landfill and recycling. We take tremendous pride in our community involvement, being sponsors and participants from the original Fiestival to the Duck Parade to the upcoming anniversary celebration. We recognize that this community is our livelihood and are proud to support it. University Place Refuge and Recycling has been a community institution for over 75 years and is excited to serve University Place for many years to come.
I should have said 80 years on that one, huh?
Yeah.
Wonderful. That was a wonderful video. A nice reminder. Great job.
Sorry about that, folks. I think it froze a little bit partway in. Let me know if you want me to play back that last 30 seconds or so.
There's the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah.
Other items for diversion from the landfill and recycling. We take tremendous pride in our community involvement, being sponsors and participants from the original Fiestival to the Duck Parade to the upcoming anniversary celebration. We recognize that this community is our livelihood and are proud to support it. University Place Refuse and Recycling has been a community institution for over 75 years and is excited to serve University Place for many years to come.
Excellent. It's always nice to be reminded of longevity. Congratulations. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Some of us have gotten to look a lot older. I wonder how that happened. I see Council Member Keel, you have your hand raised. You have a final comment?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I was going to ask Councilmember Figueroa what it was like when they started all those years ago.
Yeah. Well, I was picking cotton about that time.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do have a comment. I intend to support this contract and vote for the motion. My question is really centered around, just wanting to get an understanding of the contract and really standing on the citizen side of things. The long history that the organization has had with our city, I mean, certainly is notable and laudable and all those things in that, but I just really needed to stay in my role, in my lane, for asking the question. So that's the genesis of where that's coming from. The answers that I received are acceptable, and then we'll just continue down this as we've done for the last 80 years. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. City Clerk, can you please take a roll call vote?
Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much, and thank you both, Michael and Neil, for being here this evening. Appreciate it.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is our building code update, and for that I will ask our our development director, David Swindell, to come forward and give his staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Every 3 years, the State Building Code Council advises the state legislature on updates to the State Building Code. Since 2003, the State Building Code Council has advised the state legislature to adopt the International Code developed by the International Code Council, or ICC, as the State Building Code. This ICC develops the codes and standards used to construct residential and commercial buildings, including homes, schools, and businesses. The International Code, or I-codes, provide the minimum safeguards for the people at home, at school, and in the workplace. The I-codes are a complete set of comprehensive, coordinated building safety and fire prevention codes, and all 50 states and the District of Columbia adopt the I-codes as their state or jurisdictional codes. The Revised Code of Washington, Chapter 19.27, the State Building Code, requires the State Building Code to be in effect in all counties and all cities in the state. Tonight, the Building Code Council, as I said, advises the state legislature, and we are able to, as individual jurisdictions, required to adopt it, and we can also make some limited in-house amendments. There are no in-house amendments proposed in this update of the International Building Codes. So with that, the proposed council action is to pass an ordinance amending Ordinance 671, amending Title 14, Chapter 14 related to building and construction to comply with RCW 19.27, the State Building Code, by adopting the 2018 edition of the International Code, the 2018 edition of the State Energy Code, and the 2018 edition of the Uniform Plumbing Code. That is my presentation.
Okay, thank you. This is an item up for consideration and public comment. Again, we have received no input via email, nor do we have any public at our meeting this evening. So our next thing is, are there any council comments or questions regarding this proposed amendment? I will go through roll call. So hopefully, Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any questions or comments in regards to Mr. Swindell's presentation?
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments.
Okay, Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, no comments or questions.
Okay, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comments or questions.
Okay, Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, even if I did, it probably wouldn't matter. We have to do it anyway. So I will be quiet.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming has no questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, I do have a question for David, but I'll try and make this quick. And the reality is, yes, we do need to pass this. But David, I had was recalling that we typically have a couple of local amendments. I think they're definitional, maybe something else, but we're not doing that at this time.
No, I checked with the building official, the fire code official, and our plans examiner, and they had nothing to add. We have added amendments in the past, and those amendments are still part of the code, but there's no new amendments and no amendments to previous amendments.
So this won't be changing the code that, in a sense, you're used to enforcing it because those local amendments already exist and they're going to carry forward.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I will just ask one question that anybody that is going to be listening to this may ask. You indicated we're adopting the 2018 code and we're in 2021. Why are we 2 years behind?
The International Code Council takes a long time to review. Many details do change every 3 years. Mostly because of changes in materials and changes in technology and building methods. And then once the International Code Council adopts their, then it goes to the individual state building code councils, and they go through it and recommend their own amendments to it. So that takes some time. These were originally scheduled to become effective actually at this time last year. Because of COVID, the adoption was delayed. And in fact, just recently, the Building Code Council recommended the governor to extend the old 15 codes all the way until July of this year. The state Association of Building Officials sent a petition to the governor, and the governor overrode the Building Code Council order or recommended order, and we are now adopting it in February. So it actually goes into effect. The state building code goes into effect today, and we are right on time, right on top of it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm seeing that there wasn't a vast amount of comments or questions. I will ask for a motion for approval of the updated code.
Mayor Belisi, I move approval to update the University Place building codes, adopting the 2018 code sets as described previously.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, at this time, is there any final comments before I request a roll call vote? Okay, not seeing any. City Clerk, can you please conduct the vote?
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, yes.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
And Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Finally, we're on top of things. Okay, at this time, we're at the city manager and council reports. May I request our city manager, Steve Sugg, to come forward with his city manager report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This morning, Mayor Pro Tem Steve Worthington and myself and I attended a meeting that was called by Pierce County Executive Bruce Damemeyer concerning the issue of street racing in Pierce County. You may have recalled that in September 2020, there was an event, an illegal street racing event that happened at Seattle Center that was caught on video, and it was shown in many places, probably around the country as well, about several spectators getting hurt. It was a horrific scene captured on video. And this is a problem. Illegal street racing is a problem internationally as well as nationally. And you can find plenty of sources on the web. It's been a problem for for the past decade up in King County, not so much down here in Pierce County, but they've been dealing with it for quite a long time. In fact, the city of Kent, the illegal straight racing that happens every weekend, I think, or quite often, was the subject of a PBS documentary, 2016. So if you want to look that up, it's available, and you can. It gives quite an insight into the whole culture of street racing. Needless to say, yes, it has a following. There's sometimes hundreds of both people, individuals driving these cars and performing, and lots of spectators take over an intersection. They'll also take over industrial parks, et cetera. And here in Pierce County, we've had one event last summer. It happened quickly and was dispersed by the time the police arrived. But it made the news in Tacoma recently with that one event, which made, I think, international news. So it is a focus of the county executive to get ahead of this. Pierce County Sheriff Ed Troyer is on top of this. He and the county exec led the meeting today with agencies and cities and towns from around Pierce County. Pretty much we're pretty well represented by elected officials, by mayors, so city ministers, city managers, and a few police chiefs. So this past weekend, we anticipated in illegal street racing that was going to happen in Pierce County. We were notified. Our police chief, together with all the other police chiefs in the county, had coordinated ahead of time and had their plans ready should something happen. However, rain diminished the event. So in any case, the county had 9 deputies plus an airplane that was deployed, 63 law enforcement vehicles combined of all agencies. They made 29 stops. There was some street racing going on, but again, they like dry pavement, because the whole idea is to basically run your tires down to the rims and leave a lot of rubber back on the pavement. They made 29 stops. And I don't know about arrest, citations, and all that is more detailed than we were able to get. So to combat this problem, the county exec at the end of the meeting outlined a 4-pronged effort. 1, combined communications effort among all the agency. 2, a coordinated law enforcement strategy, development of coordinated law enforcement strategy. 3, the development of a collaborative legislative strategy. For instance, ordinances that have already been adopted by a few communities that have experienced more of this type of problem than possibly others. So before it arrives in our community, in any great degree or others, there may be some preventative action. But what the county exec said, rather than doing this piecemeal, let's coordinate our efforts. And then 4th, getting state legislative support from the state, as well as financial support, because this is an expensive operation and it's not going away. The King County's been having to deal with this for a decade or more. That gets pretty expensive when you figure out, the number of weekends that this may occur, and it happens quite often up there. Kent seems to be the center of this, and it's well known, but it also happens in Seattle and other communities up there. So why do we care? Well, the dangers associated with illegal street racing are very, very scary. Traffic collisions, injuries, fatalities to both drivers and spectators. If you've seen some of the videos of this, it's very, very scary. It is very, it's a lot of it's not controlled. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you don't want it in your community or any community in Pierce County. Also, there's been there's other criminal activity that's been associated with this, with street racing. I'm not making a broad blanket approach on this, but certainly other criminal activity has been associated with it. I'll let law enforcement address that at some other time. And so with that, I'll stop talking because I wanted to see if the Mayor Pro Tem attended the meeting with me, and he might have some other things to say about that. But that's all I had this evening, Mayor, for the report, and I don't want to take up any more time.
Okay. We typically go based on our round robin. However, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, do you have any additional comments to add to the manager's report?
Well, I do on this subject. I'll try and make it quick, though, but I think Steve did a great job covering it. There were just a couple of further details. And as Steve mentioned, there are significant crimes that are associated with this, and there certainly is a danger to the public because often there are many people, hundreds at times, standing around watching these folks show off their skills or lack thereof in the middle of the street. And sometimes those cars go out of control and go into the crowd. There's some significant issues. This weekend, while it was dampened figuratively and literally, it was still an event that actually, as Steve mentioned, had 26 or so police contacts. There were two of the participants, as we were told by the sheriff, two of the participants tried to outrun the law enforcement, but they didn't quite make it, and they were stopped, and their cars were impounded. Two other folks had their cars impounded as well. And there was a number of weapons and illegal drugs confiscated in addition. There are some serious activities that are associated, unfortunately, with this, and it is a danger to the public in these settings. So County Executive Dana Meyer, along with our county prosecutor and the sheriff, we're asking for jurisdictions to join and more on a coordinated effort of information, such as today, and also potentially to look at ordinances that we may need, or depending, about how we can do enforcement, setting a common bar throughout the county. An old associate of mine who I worked with, he was a police chief, he and I would talk about, well, if we bring folks into the jurisdiction and we do these things, we're going to squeeze the balloon, he'd say, and it would pop up someplace else. And that's why we need to do this in a coordinated effort, is make sure that we're putting pressure on this type of activity countywide and see that we all have the same tools, or similar tools at least, to be able to do that. So County Executive Dana Meyer has asked if we could perhaps get a response to him by Thursday. And it's really more at this point, not committing resources, but more a point of interest, something we want to go forward with. Mayor, if it's all right, I'd like to chat with you about that sometime, and perhaps council as suited. But that's what I have, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, council comments now. Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any report outs or comments at this time?
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments.
Do you have any comments in regards to what Councilmember Worthington and Steve Sugg had as far as coordinated effort and further direction that you might want to take?
No comments. I look forward to seeing some thoughts and ideas from a county level that will be adopted through the individual municipalities, council members, to have coordinated ordinances. I do agree that it has to be similar ordinances so that one doesn't go to another city and say, well, that's an easier place to go and do this illegal activity. So I look forward to that happening sooner than later.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, do you have any report outs?
Councilmember Keel, I have no report outs. I agree with the talk on the street racing, and I'm interested in seeing and being a participant in the countywide effort.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, any report outs at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have nothing to report on. I also agree that the street racing has to stop, and it's going to take a coordinated effort from the agencies around us. So I support any participation that UP would have in that. Thank you.
Councilmember McCluskey, any report outs at this time?
Yes, I do. And I'll start with the street racing, and I agree it should be a coordinated effort or coordinating resources as well as a collective body of legislative municipality partnership with the county. And just to throw it out there, you know, if street racing, you know, that has been in our culture for quite some time. And I don't think we're going to legislate it out. You know, we can control it and cap it and mitigate the uptick that we're seeing right now over the last 10 years. So you can always, just a back thought, you know, it may or may not work, but, you know, get a racetrack going for the people to come and take their cars and race them around and bang them so the spectators are safe and they could still see the cars, the individual cars race around. I know at one time Spanaway Speedway and some of the other speedways down in the Orange County area or so, they did open it up to the public so they can vet their cars and race them amongst others. You know, it's something that's ingrained in Americana culture. So, you know, when you close the door on that sort of activity, maybe allowing another door to open up so that you can say, you can't do it here, but on Saturday night at yada yada time, you know, you can pay $10 and you can race your, you know, your new $50,000 car that you put that revved up engine in, and hopefully, you know, you don't trash it out and you can burn all the rubber you want. Well, that's kind of my thoughts around that one. I attended the PCRC meeting on January 21st. And in that meeting, they talked about a new advisory board, the Freight Industrial Advisory Board. And that will be a rotation of eligible jurisdictions will be on that committee, and University Place obviously is not one of them. But anyway, they'll be making recommendations to the PSRC and to PCRC. The other presentation was in the countywide planning policies, and they talked about, they gave an overview and a great update to incorporate the Vision 2050 into the certification processes. And for us, for the local updates, that deadline is in June of 2024. And that will include some regional buildable land, urban growth area, transitional areas, affordable housing. Also some economic strategy is included in that, and incorporating health and wellness in all policies that will help frame the policies going forward. The new additions in the 2040 plan will extend the planning horizons to 2050, more growth near the transit components, which I guess they're going to uptick on that part. Climate change will be included, housing equity, sustainability, funding sources, and also looking at some and nature resources that includes the native tribes will be incorporated into that. And then also there was a letter, and we attached our city logo to it that will be going out collectively with the different cities on it. I think everyone received a copy of that, and that was presented at the meeting. And so the request to all municipalities, towns, and cities to put their logos on in support of the Gateway project. So for the I-5 to the SR 509 and also the Route 167 not to be delayed, but to continue on in their funding. And a gentle reminder for everyone that the General Assembly is coming up on the 3rd Thursday of February, so put that on your calendar, and hopefully we can see you all there. I will be there. And I know David Swindell was in attendance, and so I don't know if you want to add anything. It was a pretty detailed, extensive meeting, but I'll turn it over to you if you want to add anything. And my time is
summarizing
over.
what went on. Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. I'm done, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming, do you have any report outs at this time?
I do, Madam Mayor. You know, first, just a quick comment on the street racing, and thank you. I almost was going to say it's just Steve squared, but both to Steve and Steve for the update on the county exec's presentation. You know, and to Councilmember McCluskey's point, you know, street racing has been around longer than most of us are old on the council here, but be that as it may, the concern really is public safety at the end of the day and protection of property. So I certainly applaud the concerted effort of a coordinated approach to addressing this, but also for the city to have a zero tolerance for that in our community. So I'm sure there'll be more dialogue on that as we go forward. About last November, most of you may remember, the city entered into a partnership with one of our local churches and the USDA to provide refrigeration resources so that we could do food distribution to citizens who had that need. And I'm just happy to share with council tonight that the USDA has informed that church again that based on the success of the 2020 program, they've renewed them for 2021. So, you know, it's a triad partnership, if you will, with the church and the city and the USDA, and they're going to be doing 500 boxes of food a week back on that corner of Cirque and 67th. So that's a kudo for the city and for our citizens, and certainly for the community partnerships that we have. So it's great.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, did you have any additional comments above the meeting with the exec?
Just very briefly, first off, Councilmember Fleming, it's great to hear about the church's success. Look forward to that continuing. Super, it's a win. All right. Then I did want to share that I attended the Rainier Communications Commission. Matt Kaiser was also in attendance. We're essentially done with a model franchise agreement. It was my understanding that Comcast was ready to agree to it, but I'm not sure if that's happened. The point of it all is soon, in the months to come, we will have that on an upcoming agenda. And so hopefully that has happened or will happen soon. But I just wanted to share that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank Mayor Pro Tem Worthington for subbing for me at our last regular meeting at the last minute. I appreciate you being there and holding tight ship here. And I also want to thank you for stepping in this morning for the last minute meeting with the county exec. That was much appreciated there too. I have no actual, I'm in agreement this road racing needs to be a coordinated effort, and I look forward to seeing what develops out of that, and whatever regulations that we may need to implement in our code to ensure that we have tight rules and regulations that are easily enforceable would be a great thing to have. So if need be, we will make it happen so that we have the study session and get those regulations changed as soon as possible. I did attend a meeting this morning with the city manager and with Marisa Craig in attendance. It was with the Master Builders Association. It was more of a meet and greet sort of meeting, but also a way for us to introduce our newly passed form-based code to their members, and we will be having, I'm sure, future dialogue with them, as this is a pretty new concept for the individuals that we talked to. We talked to Corey Weston, who is in the construction business, but wasn't real familiar with how form-based code could be effectively implemented when you have a tight timeline on purchasing property. So staff is going to be sending them some information on our form-based code and possibly having some presentations to the Master Builders Association showing them how flexible and creative developers can get with this code. And hopefully we might see some interest in being able to develop what we call the middle ground of housing, which is, the townhomes and the triplexes and smaller condominium developments in our regional growth center area. So it's just a matter of educating the development community to get them out of the mindset of developing strictly single family or strictly apartments, the Woody walk-up apartments. So I think we struck some interest. Mr. Sugg was extremely enthusiastic and did a great job in selling the City of University Place to them, and how we have some developments in the pipeline as a result of what we passed here with the form-based code. So look forward to having more of that to come. Other than that, I have no additional information to share. I do want to thank all my council members publicly for the great enthusiastic discussion we had at our retreat. We had some good thought processes. We will be, staff is compiling all the comments, and hopefully by our next meeting on the 16th, I will be able to present to you a report out of all of our comments and kind of proposed actions that staff and the Mayor Pro Tem and myself have in regards to how we may plan on proceeding over the next year. So your comments are not going to be lost. They will be prioritized and you'll have an opportunity to review them. So expect more to come on that. So with that, our city manager and council reports are closed at this time. We will go on to our study session. Our next item is our purchasing policy. This is the third study session that we're having on this particular item for hopeful passage of an ordinance. So with that, I would request that our finance director, Leslie Blaisdell, come forward with her staff report, and then we will have comments and question opportunities from council.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director. And as you said, this is our third study session. So I'm going to keep my report brief because we've gone over a lot of this in the first two study sessions. Just as a reminder for the public watching, the update to the purchasing policy was prompted by a council request to include language related to local preference. And in addition to the requested council change, we've included changes to the formatting and the look of the document to make it more online friendly and easier for staff to use. The basic policies from our current policy are unchanged. There was a question at our last study session related to the various bid, quote, and proposal language, and I've provided details of each of those descriptions in the memo that was provided in your packet. The changes that are included in the document include the sustainable purchasing language. We've made changes to the public works single craft and multi-craft projects to match the state RCW, and language was added to section 1.10 related to council approval. And then, as we've discussed before, changes proposed but not yet included in the document relate to the levels when we need quotes. And I'm sorry, the cat never comes in here except right now. Relate to the levels for competitive requirements for informal quotes, written quotes, and our formal bid process. So if the council approves these adjustments, we'll update the document and come back to council for approval at either our next meeting or the first meeting in March. And in addition to the policy itself, there will need to be conforming changes to the municipal code And we had provided that ordinance at the first 2 study sessions, and we'll just bring that back at the same time. So with that, I'm available to answer any remaining questions related to the purchasing policy.
Okay, given that this is our 3rd study session, I won't bore you with the roll call vote, and I'll just ask for you to raise your hand if you have additional comments or questions that need to be answered. And I see that Councilmember Fleming has raised his hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you've well pointed out, this is our 3rd time around, and to Leslie's comments, the staff has incorporated all the concerns that the council had. I, for the sake of just conducting business in the city, would recommend that instead of waiting around till March, that we bring this back to council at our next meeting and get it passed and move it on.
Okay. Any other comments or questions at this time? Councilmember Figueroa, you will have to unmute.
Yes, and I appreciate Council Members Fleming's comments, and I do want to jump on board with that recommendation to you as the mayor, bringing this forward to the council for a vote sooner than later.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions or comments regarding this study item? Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. And Leslie, I have to express my that I was sorry that I had to step out for a moment during your presentation. So you may have said something, and I'm asking a question about it, but it was necessary for me to step away. In any case, how are we dealing with with request for proposals versus request for qualifications? Did we make some changes in this version?
We have not made changes in this version. We have included additional descriptions and detail so that staff can understand it better. And when we roll this out to the staff to do some one-on-one sessions and make sure that they understand the difference between proposals and the various different formal bidding processes.
That's great. Could you help us, if you don't mean to put you on the spot, and you could respond to this at another time, but perhaps you could help articulate the distinction about when we would use request for proposals versus when we would use request for qualifications.
Sure, and I also provided those descriptions if anyone wants to refer back to it at another time. A proposal is the document that's submitted by the offeror in response to an RFP or an RFQ. And RFP is the request for proposal. It is a solicitation of competitive proposals or offers to be used as a basis for making an acquisition or entering into a contract when specification and price will not necessarily be the predominant award criteria. An RFP typically focuses on a specific project and includes price as one of the submittal requirements. So it may be a specialized contractor or and we may need certain skills in addition to price. A request for quote does not have price or cost considerations and is dependent on qualifications only. An RFQ is commonly used for architects and engineers per the RCW, and it can be used and cost as an evaluation factor. And then we have the request for bid, which is the formal bid process for things like our construction projects and the like.
Okay, great, thank you. And so the request for qualifications, yeah, just that. Typically it's engineers, it's architects, there might be a couple of other opportunities when it's used. In some of our council study sessions, we've talked about making this as using using RFQs, request for qualifications, as needed in the is required by RCW, but not as a more generalized approach. So as required by the RCWs, yeah, we should do this. We have to do it anyway. But the request for proposal has more flexibility in it for us to make a selection, and we can, along with looking for qualifications, along with looking at the details of how something would be done, we can also look at price. when we're doing an RFQ, request for qualifications, and making a selection, or our team is making such a selection, they don't see the price. Price is not the consideration. If you're building an engineer, if you want an engineer to build a bridge, you want a good engineer to build that bridge. It doesn't matter his price or her price. It's the quality. So what we had talked about earlier at a previous study session was being clear that we would use RFQs when RFQs are required. And I was looking to see if that got captured, and I'm not sure if that has.
Okay. Any other comments or questions at this time? All right, Councilmember Figueroa.
Well, in following Worthington's comment, I thought he was asking for a response from Leslie. Maybe misunderstood, but the way he ended his comment was like a response from Leslie on what he was saying. I didn't hear it.
You want to state your comment in a question format, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thanks for the opportunity to be clear. Leslie, in the draft that we have in front of us, do we allow the use of request for qualifications to take place in situations beyond the sole time that they're directed by RCW?
I would have to really dig into the language. That's a little bit more detailed than I was prepared for to see exactly if the situation you're proposing is addressed within this policy. But we did not make any changes to the current policy. Again, we just included more description and more links so that staff could better make a determination of which route to go.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, it sounds like we still have some flexibility. Flexibility sometimes is good, but the fact is, and it's been my observation, that I believe we've used RFQs when we could have, in my view, should have used request for proposals, because we have more flexibility ourselves in the decision process than we do with an RFQ. We've used it, for example, in certain cases where it's planning services. It's not an engineer, it's not an architect, it's planning services, and that is where this came to light in some discussions I've had with staff previous to this. So, in any case, that was my point. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Keel.
Yeah, and thank you, Mayor. So just in the spirit of trying to get to some kind of maybe work around for where we are, I'm wondering, Leslie or Matt, whomever, that if we're not addressing it in the policy, and the policy gives us a lot of flexibility, I'm wondering if we can put in our practice or in our procedure the direction to use the RFP more cases than not today. And so just to Councilman Worthington, to your point, if it's not in the policy, I'm wondering, and the policy is peanut butter spread, maybe we can point it in our procedure that to get it, maybe that might be helpful.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. We have documentation, kind of one-page documents that hit the high points that people can keep on their desk, and we can certainly include some additional language related to that, breaking it down and making sure that we go the right direction when these come through.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Figueroa, you had another comment?
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Keel. You hit it where I was, hit the mark where I was going. And Leslie, I'm still not satisfied with your answer on this. I think what we're looking for is specific language that specifies and gives policy direction to those that are doing these, that an RFP will be the desired vehicle versus an RFQ in doing business in UP. Only when a RFQ is really required, it gets more flexibility. I think we need more, very specific policy direction, and I'm not hearing that so far. And I think that's what we're going to be looking for if this is going to pass.
Okay. Now, I can work with the city attorney to address that language and get that out prior to when we bring this back to council.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
right.
Steve and Kent.
Yep. Any other comments about this study session item? Okay, hearing none. Did Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, did you have something on that you wanted to say? Okay.
No, all it's good.
Okay. Well, we look forward to those changes as were brought forward this evening in our final document when we bring it forward for a vote. Our next item is our stormwater management program update from our engineering director, Jack Eklund. Can you please come forward and provide us with your staff report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I'm Jack Eklund, Director of Engineering, and also I'm going to ask up with me is Todd Smith, our NPDS Coordinator. And tonight we are bringing to you for study the annual update to the city's stormwater management program. As a condition of our NPDS municipal stormwater permit, the city is required to develop, implement, and annually update our stormwater management program. This program lists the components that are required to be addressed under the NPDS permit and identifies the actions and activities to be conducted by the city in order to meet our permit requirements. Attached in your council pocket, you will find a copy of the proposed program update as well as a summary memo. The changes, there's kind of a status quo update, and so the changes in this year's update are minor, and they consist of updating the dates of the public comment period and council meetings, as well as removing references to milestones and deadlines that have already been completed. I do want to apologize and point out that there was a typo in the copy of the program that was provided in your council packet relating to the public comment period, which now has been corrected in the official proposal. So to clarify, the public comment period began today and runs through February 16th. I'd also like to invite the public to view the draft program on our city website under the engineering page, as well as provide any comments to the engineering department, and the links of how to provide comments are shown on the city's website. And then the public is also invited to participate in the comment portion of the public hearing on this program, which is scheduled for the February 16th council meeting. So with that being said, Todd and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, again, since this is study session and this is an annual update, I will ask for a show of hands of any council member that may have some comments or questions of Mr. Eklund. Are there any comments or questions? Council Member McCluskey. You will need to unmute.
Thank you. Pardon me?
Oh, you unmuted already, so.
Oh, okay, yes. I guess I was a little slow. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I would like to thank the educational programming that Mr. Smith put forward during the COVID time. I hope you got, I'm just interested in how well attended it was, since it was a virtual platform.
Thank you. Yeah, it was our best number of participants yet. The virtual format, while I thought may not have been what most people want for technology purposes, but it was 200, close to 200 people in one alone, and then we had 70 in another, and I think we had 45 in the last one, and it was amazing. That's we average around 30, I think, in most of our other times the last couple years. So very well attended, and it looks like we'll be doing the same format. We're going to try to get those scheduled for this spring, April, May time.
Yeah, maybe virtual is the way to go.
Yeah.
Unless there's some interactive demonstrative projects. But anyway, that's really exciting, Todd. Thank you. What are the educational topics going forward for the 2021?
Well, we'll be doing the series again with another set of speakers. I'm also doing. I think
Todd, to clarify, that series you're talking to, it's our Natural Yard Cares series.
Yes.
You want to describe that a little bit?
Well, we partner with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. They get some really top-notch speakers and garden experts, and we'll be looking at 3 new speakers, 3 new subject matters. So we try not to hit the same stuff every year, but they're very exciting. With the virtual, they're able to do their presentations from their own gardens a lot at their own house, which is pretty neat, where it's very interactive. So we'll be doing that.
All right, thank you. Send me the list when you get it together, okay? I
will.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And then lastly, in the stormwater monitoring and assessment, it was in the collective funds. I just want to understand that better. It said initially that it was a one-time payment of $15,000, but then I read in another place where that was an annual assessment of $15,000. And I was hoping for the one time, but I'm sure it's probably more than likely the annual one that will be conducted. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I thought I read it in 2 different ways in the presentation versus in the document.
And it is an annual fee. It's contribution. Early on, we had the opportunity to do it on our own. When we priced that out, doing it ourselves, it was well over twice as much of what it would be in this paying into the collective deal. And in fact, since then, the collective price has gone down, so that delta is probably even larger. So it is more cost effective to do it. It is unfortunately an ongoing cost that we have to budget for annually.
Okay. And then once this update is done, the annual cost is over, correct? Or is it ongoing as well as we continue with the stormwater management program with updates? And
it'll be ongoing. This current permit goes through 2024. And so in 2024, for 2025 and to 2030 probably, a new permit would come in effect, which may alter what that contribution could be. Could go up, could go down. We don't know at this point, but it's at least kind of locked in for this current term.
All right. Right. Thank you very much for the answers and the updates.
Councilmember Figueroa, you had a comment or a question?
Yes, Jack, is this a lifetime issue that will never end, having to pay to collect them? I know a lot of our stormwater fees is due to this whole effort that started back, a decade ago or over a decade ago. And I thought at some point that this was going to end, like it was going to be a 10-year effort or whatever, but it doesn't seem to ever end. Is this a lifetime effort that's never going to disappear?
I don't think the state will ever say that it is, but I would be shocked if it ended. It could morph into something bigger. Unfortunately, we just don't know. It could change from a monitoring to a mandatory, facility improvement kind of program. But at this point, it's hard to tell. Each permit term is going to be different, and I don't foresee a ending of that in the reasonable time frame.
But the permit terms have been established, so they keep moving and new ones established.
Yeah, the federal requirement is to have that everyone has to have a permit in perpetuity, and then it's just the state issues a permit period with specific terms for generally 5 years. Sometimes it gets extended depending on where the state is with their comments and so forth. But generally, they try to stick with a 5-year period, and then they will kind of change their game plan that next permit term to what they would like to see done.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of staff at this time? Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very quick. But to Jack's comments, you know, when I chaired the committee at the county that oversaw the MPD program there, and then back in DC when we worked with the feds, Jack's predictions are spot on because that's the direction we're headed. You know, as municipalities, whether we like it or not, it's coming. So we just need to plan and prepare for it.
Yep. You're dead on, Councilmember Fleming. So are there any other comments or questions at this time? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Eklund and Mr. Smith for your study session presentation tonight. I look forward to having this on our agenda for review and approval by council. So, yeah, not seeing any other comments or questions at this time, I will adjourn our meeting. Thank you.